This is Sasha Johnson, a prominent anti-racism campaigner. She's fighting for her life in hospital after reportedly being shot in the head. The incident happened in Southwark in southeast London. Police were called to an address on Consort Road behind me at just after 3 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. It is there, they say, they found a 27-year-old woman who had suffered from a gunshot wound. Detectives from the Metropolitan Police's Specialist Crime Command are leading the investigation. In a statement, the Met says, while the investigation is at an early stage, there is nothing to suggest the woman who was shot was the subject of a targeted attack or that she had received any credible threats against her prior to this incident.
I'm going to get into that in a minute because it's a lot of false narratives going around our sector of YouTube about this. What happened to this young lady in London. I'm going to get into that in a minute. Trust me.
While the investigation is at an early stage, there is nothing to suggest the woman who was shot was the subject of a targeted attack or that she had received any credible threats against her prior to this incident. Last August, Sasha Johnson organised a large-scale march to protest against systemic racism. She told Sky News what drives her activism.
The UK disassociates from racism, but we have to remember the Windrush generation came here. When we're funding war to bomb other countries and people are coming here for safety and rest, then we're fluing them away for our xenophobia. So we're not disassociating from it. We're saying yes, it's here, but we need to address it now. We're in 2020. We've come too far for racism to still be a problem.
The 27-year-old mother is a committee member of the political party taking the initiative. The party says, "It is with great sadness that we inform you that our own Sasha Johnson has sustained a gunshot wound to her head. Sasha has always been actively fighting for black people and the injustices that surround the black community. So far, there have been no arrests. Police are appealing to anyone with any information to come forward." Jemima Walker, Sky News.
Okay, first, let's talk about this first before we get into anything. Being a Black Lives Matter activist is the safest occupation on the planet. We haven't had a story, a legitimate story. Now, I'm going to get into this in a minute about all the Black Lives activists on the local level that were just regular black people that fell victim to the gun violence that's prevalent in Black America. You've had that. We've had plenty of that. Black activists getting killed just around Black America because black people get killed all the time by other black people. And those activists happen to be black people and they got killed. However, being a Black Lives Matter activist is the safest occupation on the planet. It's safer than anything you could do. Working on the railroad, being a soldier in Afghanistan, it's safer. You have a less chance of dying being... I can't remember a story. Now remember, CNN, MSNBC, they run the mainstream news. If a white supremacist coughed on a Black Lives Matter activist, it would be a 2-week news cycle. I can't remember a Black Lives Matter activist being bumped by white supremacists. I can't remember a Black Lives Matter activist being leered at. By a white supremacist. I can't remember a Black Lives Matter activist in a crowded room being nudged, elbowed by white supremacists. And so was the case for this young lady, Sasha Johnson. She was at a house party, enjoying herself. Because you know the activism is part of her life, but she's also a person. She likes to have fun. She's also a mother. She takes care of her kids. And she was at a house party. And as y'all like to say, to sanitize it in the liberal news media, when a black person does it, gunfire erupted. Shots rang out. And of course, Sasha wasn't the target. like so many women, like the woman I just covered at the vigil in Brooklyn, like the little girl I covered in Minneapolis who's eating a Happy Meal, like the young white man I'm covering, the mechanical engineering student in Minneapolis was at a club past weekend. Two brothers got in an argument, started shooting at each other. He gets hit hours before graduation. And Sasha, she was the victim. Now, the rare part of this is that they don't really do guns in England. It's a lot of stabbing because guns are very hard to get. The gun laws in England are very, very, they just don't have shootings. Nobody has guns. You get stabbed up there. Stabbings are out of control. Stabbings are out of control in England. It is crazy. And this is the biggest, England is the biggest test case to show you guys that it's not guns. I tried to use Appalachia, I tried to use Wyoming, I tried to use all these white areas in America where everybody got 20 guns, everybody ride around with guns, everybody got a gun on their hip, open carry, all these open carry states. Where there's not a lot of us. I tried to use that example, said I was a coon. Because the low murder rates in those areas, not low like compared to black. I'm talking about low compared to the rest of the civilized world, like literally like minuscule, microscopic murder rates in those areas. But I said I'm a coon because, it's shown the light on black people. Well, England, they don't have any guns. No one has a gun. And stabbings happen almost as much as shootings happen in America per capita. And guess who's doing those stabbings? Well, let's get into Sasha. Sasha Johnson, BLM activist in critical condition after gunshot to the head. The Black Lives Matter activist Sasha Johnson is in critical condition after sustaining a gunshot wound to her head in an incident in South London. Her affiliated group, Taking the Initiative Party, has announced on social media. In a statement on the Facebook group, the party said the incident happened in the early hours of Sunday and followed numerous death threats. They really want to, link this. They know black folk in America is searching for this. Black folk in America have been searching for a Black Lives Matter activist to get killed. They want that to happen because, think about it. Let me tell you something. When no Black Lives Matter activists get killed, ever, what does that say? That says that, well, God damn it, y'all not even a threat. Nobody even worried about y'all. Y'all actually have done more damage to the black community. Look at the murder rate. Murder up 35% since George Floyd's death. Meaning, for every 1,000 black people murdered in previous years, there's now 1,350 murdered. So 350 extra people murdered for every 1,000. That's a huge number. That's over a third. Okay? What if you made $1,000 a week and your check got bumped up 35% and you told your wife, yeah, baby, I'm going to be coming home with $1,350 every month, every week, 2 weeks now, instead of $1,000. You think your wife would be happy? Hell yeah. Okay? So, that's a huge number. Murder up. Black Lives Matter has destroyed the black community. The last thing any racist would ever do is try to harm a group that's trying to get rid of the police in black neighborhoods. Someone that's getting rid of gang units and special task force and vice squads in black neighborhoods and letting thugs roam rampant. You see what it's done? Murder rate up 35%. So no one is going to touch a Black Lives Matter activist. They're not a threat. The only threat they are is to the black community. In a statement on the group's Facebook page, the party said the incident happened in the early hours of Sunday and followed numerous death threats. A Met police officer statement said there was nothing to suggest that it had been a targeted attack. Now you know what they're going to say. The Illuminati, the police in on it. The police is working with the white supremacists that shot Sasha at the parties. The white supremacists came to a party in a black neighborhood in the hood and shot this Black Lives Matter activist. Y'all don't know how terrified these white people is of y'all. These white people ain't coming in your neighborhoods. Taking the initiative, party's statement said, "It is with great sadness that we inform you that our own Sasha Johnson has sustained a gunshot wound to her head. She is currently hospitalized in a critical condition. The incident happened in the early hours of this morning, following numerous death threats. Sasha has always been actively fighting for black people and the injustices that surround the black community, as well as being both a member of BLM and a member of Taking the Initiative Party's Executive Leadership Committee. Sasha is also the mother of 3 and a strong, powerful voice for our people in our community. Johnson is a prominent member of TTIP, which has been described as Britain's first black-led political party. She rose to prominence after last year's BLM protests spread around the country, helping to organize marches and addressing crowds. She has worked on activism and community support and achieved a first-class degree in social care from Oxford Brookes University. Her page on the TTP website said she has an immense passion for implementing change and justice and has been actively supporting the eradication of injustices in society by attending and leading protests. Yeah, because that's how you change society, by protesting. That's really worked. You had 9,000 protests from the day George Floyd died, May 25th, to December 31st of 2001. That 6-month period, you had 9,000 George Floyd protests. And just the other day, I seen a video where a nigga was fighting with the cops and he got shot. Anytime you fight with the cops, you're going to get shot. Nothing has changed. I still haven't seen a knee to the neck. Now, that was the new one. I hadn't seen a knee to the neck before, and I haven't seen one since. Because remember, that's something that happens all the time. 24/7, cops is putting knees on brothers' necks. We in the cell phone era, so I don't want to hear about, you can't find it. Cell phone era. Didn't see a knee to the neck before, except for Tony Temple, the white guy. Didn't see a knee to the neck since. So that must, and we know they do that tactic often. That's a tactic that's done in many principalities around the United States. Many municipalities, towns. It's not done everywhere, but there's spots where they do that to guys that have enough fentanyl in their system to kill horses and are acting crazy. They put the knee on your neck and they just leave you right there, and you chill out, and then they take you to jail. They do that all the time throughout the United States. We only got one case of a brother getting killed by it, and that brother had enough fentanyl in the system to kill an elephant. Claudia Webb, the MP for Leicester East, wrote online, "Shocking to hear of the gunshot to the head of Sasha Johnson. All women should be safe on our streets." They starting to do the women thing. Now we starting to see they pushing back off the blackity black thing. Claudia Webb, the MP for Leicester East, wrote online, "Shocking to hear the gunshot wound to the head of Sasha Johnson. All women should be on our streets, should be safe on our streets. Wishing her a full recovery, sending love and solidarity to her family and friends and loved ones. There's still too many guns and violent weapons damaging too many lives. BLM. Actually, there are no guns in there are very few guns, but whatever. In England, the Metropolitan Police later reissued an appeal for witnesses in relation to the 27-year-old. Now, this happened at a black party with a bunch of black people. And a white guy supposed to came in here and shot her. White supremacist supposed to came in and shot her in front of all these black people. All right, where the witnesses at? Because that ain't what happened. Y'all snitch on white people. Anybody know, hit one in the comment section if you know this. There's a no snitch policy in black America, but that does not extend to white people. The no snitch policy is only for black thugs. Let one of you so-called high-value men go out here and do something. Everybody gonna be telling on you. Black community worldwide, there's a no snitch policy, but it's only for black thugs. It's never for anybody else. Sister, you go do something. I dare one of you sisters to go do something crazy in public. Everybody gonna snitch on you. Everybody gonna single mother, she went in there. That's the problem. Black woman, go out here and do something crazy in public and see how many people snitch on you. It's only for black thugs. It's only for black thugs that they don't snitch on. The Metropolitan Police later reissued an appeal for witnesses in relation to the 27-year-old woman in the hospital with life-threatening injuries after being shot in the early hours on Sunday. The Met said the woman was found after officers were called to reports of gunshots in Peckham, southeast London, shortly before 3 a.m. It is believed the shooting occurred in the vicinity of a house where a party was taking place, and a number of people may have been in the area. A spokesperson said that while the investigation was at an early stage, there was nothing to suggest it was a targeted attack and that the woman had received any credible threats against her before the incident. Detectives from the Met Specialist Crime Command, Trident, were leading the investigation. Okay, so in the UK, the United Kingdom, which includes London, England, Wales, all that stuff, a firearm certificate is required to purchase firearms, and a separate shotgun certificate is required for shotguns. The guiding laws for firearms in Scotland are the Firearms Scotland Rules 1989 and the Firearms Act 1968. All handguns, semi-automatic, and pump-action non-rim fire rifles are prohibited. The right to keep and bear arms is not legally or constitutionally protected in the United Kingdom. While citizens may possess certain firearms on an appropriate license, all handguns, automatic, and centerfire semi-automatic weapons are illegal to possess without special provisions. So they get it in England. They not talking about AR-15s and yada, yada, yada. You know what most people in America get killed by? The country that has the worst gun violence problem in the world? Well, one of the worst, other than Brazil and Mexico, but, you know, whatever. The developed country, the first world country, the established country, the country that would be considered a superpower, the country, the Western country. We're not talking about third world countries, underdeveloped countries. We're only talking about developed countries, because Jamaica has 3 million people, population of 3 million. They have 2,500 murders a year. Compare that to Chicago, who has 3 million people and has 750 murders a year. So, U.S. is not the worst country when it comes to gun violence. They're the worst developed nation when it comes to gun violence. Handguns. That's what people get killed with. Handguns. 98% of the people get killed with handguns. Glocks. Pistols. Okay? Things like that. Now, London has a population of 8.9 million people. Basically, 9 million people live in London. And it was once one of the greatest cities in the world. Maybe not the cleanest, maybe not the best weather, but it was one of the greatest cities in the world. And we've seen a lot of these great cities in the world be destroyed. We're seeing New York be destroyed right now. We're seeing a lot of great cities go down the tubes. Okay? Even San Diego is getting a little sketchy, which is just crazy. But London was once one of the greatest cities in the world. Huge city. Similar population to New York. Just a huge metropolis. And one thing they're asking now is the same question they're asking in New York. If you know anything about New York City, those white folk is fleeing New York. They're fleeing New York like those people fled Pompeii when that volcano erupted. Like, they are leaving New York, Jack. The mayor was even begging them not to leave because he needs their tax revenue. They rely on that those white people in London, in New York, for their taxes, to pay taxes, even though they don't want to have police to protect them, and they can't carry guns. Only criminals can have guns in New York, so they're leaving New York. But now people are also asking, why have the white British left London? So white people are also fleeing London, where Sasha Johnson was killed. And I think Sasha Johnson would have been wise to leave too. One thing you notice is once the white people start leaving, that's a sign. And I'm not going to get into what the sign is. You guys, I would prefer you guys in the chat or the comment section to tell me what the sign is. Once white people start leaving a place where the gun laws are very strict. Why do white people leave places with strict gun laws? Where they've lived in this place with strict gun laws for X amount of years, decades upon decades upon decades, and all of a sudden they feel like, okay, we lived in this place with strict gun laws, but now it's time to get the hell up out of this place. That's one of today's questions for the chat. Why is that? Something quite remarkable happened in London in the first decade of the new millennium. The number of white British people in the capital fell by 600,020. The population fell by 600,020. The population fell by 620,000. Jesus. I couldn't even believe that number. My mind couldn't believe that number. That's a lot of people that left this city. Woo! 620,000 people just fled the city. The consequences, as revealed by the latest census, is that white Brits are now a minority in London, making up just 45% of its residents. So where have they gone? And why did they leave? I've been analyzing and mapping the census data, and what emerges is a much more positive story than some headlines would make you think. The movement of the white British is often characterized as white flight, the indigenous population forced out of their neighborhoods by foreign immigrants, foreign migrants. That may be part of the story, but I think evidence suggests it is also about working class aspiration and economic success. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. Them white folks are leaving because of the knife violence in London, which is off the hook. Nearly 1,000 arrested and 400 knives seized in police crackdown on violent crime in London. So, this is what you see on the streets of London. This is what happens on the streets of London. Knives. Rarely do people get shot like our Black Lives Matter activist Sasha Johnson. As I already shown you, the gun laws are hellish. The police don't carry guns. That's what you got. Just think about that. They have officers, the beat cops, they don't even carry guns. They carry billy club. So you have to think about that. The vast majority of UK police don't carry guns. Okay? Now they have special ops, special groups, SWAT teams, and task force, but the regular beat cops do not carry guns. The people don't want them to carry guns because they don't have guns. It's very, 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 very strict gun laws there. Virtually no one has a gun. Virtually. In a city of 9 million people, it's not like New York where every thug, every hoodlum's got a gun and no law-abiding citizens have guns. Like, no, the thugs don't even carry guns. They carry knives and hatchets and things like that. So the police officers not going to have guns in England because no one has guns in England. And even though there are no guns in England, they still have a very similar problem in a certain sector of their community that we have in America. Sasha Johnson's community. And now she was shot in the head, but that's such a rare occasion. Well, let's talk about the problems in Sasha Johnson's community in London. Commander Alex Murray says, the results from this operation highlight the Met's dedication and commitment to tackling violent crime. And I'm convinced that with us seizing so many knives, we have prevented further stabbings. As we move forward into summer months, reducing violence and saving lives will remain our top policing priority. The recent incidents of violence we have seen in London reminds us exactly why our operations like this are so important. So, listen, same issues, Sasha Johnson's community is having the same issues. It's not supremacists, it's them. And they want to blame everybody else. It has nothing to do with the pandemic. It has nothing to do with none of that crap. It's been going on. It's been going on. Okay? Nothing to do with that. Britain's pervasive horror of knife crime reaches record for number of stabbing homicides. A boy 7 threatens to knife a pregnant school teacher. 2 high school students from opposite ends of the country Both 17 die in violent stabbings hours apart. After 5 separate knife attacks over 4 days in one area of Britain's capital city, London, a 45-year-old woman's spinal cord is severed, leaving her paralyzed. Knife-related homicides took 285 lives in England and Wales from March of 2017 to March of 2018, a record since data collected began in 1946. Unlike the USA, where guns are tied to many deaths, only 4% of homicides here in London last year were from shootings. 39% were from sharp instruments. Police leaders, youth workers, and victims' families called for action. What does that sound like? Police leaders, youth workers, and victims' families called for action over what Prime Minister Theresa May described as a public health emergency and a cancer affecting British society, violence by its youths. The pervasive horror of knife crime must end, said Charles, Prince of Wales, in his Easter message. It's getting worse, and I don't believe we've reached the peak, said Carolyn Shearer, whose son Jay was fatally stabbed in 2012 at age 17. Shearer runs Only Cowards Carry, an organization that teaches school kids about the grim physical realities of knife crime. From organ failure to macabre forensics, as part of an effort to prevent others from dying in similar circumstances. She says, I was quite naive before my son was murdered. I believed that stabbings only occurred if drugs or gangs were involved, she said. Jay was killed by a vegetable knife at a private party. He was celebrating his exam results. And I promise you, I'm not showing you guys this because I hate myself. I'm actually doing this because I love myself. And you would too if you loved yourself and your people. You would bring attention to this fact. Black Londoners, who are not the majority, even though the white population has gone down, the white population is only 45%, that other 55% is a melting pot of the world. I mean, it's Arabs, Asians, Southeast Asians, which means India, people like that, Pakistan, Middle Easterners. I mean, you got all types of people. The black population in there is similar to the black population in the United States, 12, 13%. In London, even less in London, but, still, somewhere around it. We're about 1/10, 1 in every 10. 1/10 of the population there. Black Londoners 3 times more likely to be murdered than other ethnic groups, figure shows. Now, you think that's because of white supremacists, or you think that's because of other black Londoners? What do y'all think that's because? Hit one if you think that's because of white supremacists. And hit 2 if you think that's because of other black Londoners. Almost half of all murder victims in London in 2019 were black. Now remember, it's worse now. It's worse now. But this is 2019 because I want to show you that if anybody wanted to come and say, well, that's because of the pandemic, or that's because of 2020, craziness of 2020. No. It's been like this. Almost half of all murder victims in the capital, London, in 2019 were black, despite them making up only 13% of the city's population. And Sasha ain't touching this. This is the point that I want to let you guys know. Sasha is not touching this. She talking about racism. Well, these people ain't, come on, it's the same thing here where it's like, you gotta search for it. In your everyday life, you not seeing no goddamn racism. It's systemic, because once you say systemic, institutional, you don't have to prove it. Sasha won't touch this with a 10-foot pole. And that's why I think a brother came and shot her. And that's what's going to start happening to these black female activists in the United States. They're going to bring on that, they're going to keep talking about white supremacy and institutional this, and a brother going to come and smoke them. Because they let their children down by not talking about the main threat that affects their children as mothers. This woman has three children in a place where they're calling the knife violence, what they calling it, horrifying. I forgot what the lady said, but it's horrifying. Like, it's a horror. People live in terror because of the knife violence. Constant state of terror. And she talking about systemic institutional racism and running around, and now she got shot in the head in a place where they don't even carry guns. Almost half of all murder victims in the capital in 2019 were black, despite them making up only 13% of the city's population, according to an analysis conducted by the Charity Action on Armed Violence. Now, just to give you guys, because I know you guys really want to, white people do it too, I'm going to give you guys a little nugget. The organization used media reports and open source data to establish the ethnicity of 135 of the 147 people who were violently killed in London last year. It found 62 were black. Okay? 21 were white. So you got 21 white people got stabbed to death. So white people do it too. And 4 were Asian or Latin American or of mixed heritage. So you had 21 white people stabbed to death. So there you go. Okay. So it's so bad over there that, I mean, listen, these are the ones they confiscate. This is what people walk around carrying this stuff. Perspective on black knife crime. The causes of stabbings in the black community cannot be understood from intellectual or prejudicial positions, argues Julian Lee, while Nick Moss thinks widely used definitions of such crimes are part of the problem. So they woke over there. The problem is the definition used of the crime. So after the Negro gets stabbed, the way you, the definition, the way you talk about it is the problem. Not that the Negro stabbed another Negro. The causes of stabbings in the black community in London cannot be understood from intellectual or prejudicial positions, argues Julian Lee, while Nick Moss thinks widely used definitions of such crimes are part of the problem. Now, a lot of people made fun of 21 Savage when it was revealed that he was really from Britain. And a lot of people tried to talk about his street cred, but 21 Savage is a real, as y'all like to say, real nigga. I mean, y'all promote that stuff. He's a real savage. He didn't get that name. He ain't walking around calling himself Savage. And Negroes in Atlanta not saying anything about it because his because he's not a real savage. He's a real savage. But his brother, he had a brother who he left behind in London. And that brother was stabbed to death. British police have arrested and charged the man suspected of murdering 21 Savage's brother, Terrell Davis. The 27-year-old drill rapper who performed as TM One Way, so his brother was also a drill rapper in London, was stabbed to death near London on November 22nd while reportedly bringing groceries home for his grandmother. According to a release from the Metro Police, a 21-year-old man named Tyrese Fuller. We got a Terrell Davis and a Tyrese Fuller. A 21-year-old man named Tyrese Fuller was charged with murder on November 28th and is slated to appear in court. Terrell was found stabbed in Ramillies Close on the afternoon of the 22nd and pronounced dead at the scene. Remember this one? Black Lives Matter activist Oluwatoyin found dead. This was a big story. Well, on Facebook, not on the mainstream media. CNN only covered it on their online. They didn't cover it on the news. Don Lemon, Anderson Cooper, none of them, Aaron Burnett, none of them covered it. But it was covered on there. This is what CNN does. They cover things. They get plausible denied. Well, we covered it. They covered it on their website, but nobody goes to, and they bury it. Like, you won't see this on the front page. You have to go into the search bar and search for it. A lot of these stories, this is what you got to understand about CNN, guys. A lot of stories that I cover, if you go into the CNN search bar and you search in the right keywords, you can find an article on CNN about it. But it won't just, when you go to the website, just the front page, then they won't talk about it. You can search all through the pages, you won't see it. But if you type in the keywords, this young lady, Oluwatoyin Salu, she was killed by Aaron Glee, a brother. And the story, which never even took off, which was huge on Facebook and Twitter, instantly died. Black folk instantly stopped talking about this once that picture of Aaron Glee popped up. Once they arrested Aaron, first they tried to say it was a conspiracy. Because they tried to say, first off, they tried to put her up as like she was killed by white supremacists. White supremacists killed her. Then come to find out she was homeless. And she was staying with this guy and they were drinking and guy killed her, and just a messy situation. Just a messy situation. The guy was dead wrong. She didn't do nothing wrong, but she was homeless. Homeless Black Lives Matter activist, while Patrisse Cullors is out here. Patrisse Cullors is out here. She about to have her own show on the Home and Garden Network. Patrisse Cullors about to have BLM FYI. Fixer-uppers. BLM fixer-uppers. DIU. Do it yourself. BLM do it yourself on the Home and Garden Network. And this young lady was homeless. And she's 19 years old, homeless BLM activist. And she was one of the main ones on the bullhorn. Like, when they had their little things, she was out front. Didn't have a place to stay.
A Black Lives Matter activist is one of the latest murder victims in New Orleans. The South Carolina native was shot early yesterday morning in Mid-City.
And today we're learning more about what happened. Kristen Pierce talked to a homeowner who tried to save the man, and we also have some shocking video moments after the shooting.
What did you see? What did you hear?
Just gunshots. That's it.
Jerry Curtis says a man who'd been shot walked right in front of his home on Bienville Street in Mid-City and collapsed in a pool of blood.
He just fell here and asked for help.
The man has now been identified as Muhyiddin Dubaha, a Charleston, South Carolina native. Dubaha was shot in the leg around 1:30 Tuesday morning and later died at the hospital. The moments after he was shot caught on camera. The 32-year-old enters the frame on the left, walking his bike. You can see blood on his leg. When he gets to the curb, he stumbles, drops his bike, and walks across the street in front of Jerry's house.
Puddle of blood. And a person begging and screaming for help. I wish I could have did more for him.
He was loving, he was funny, he was smart.
He's always a little bit of fun, a little bit of seriousness, a mix of everything, but overall, happiness. The death of Muhyiddin Dubaha is not just a loss for his family and friends, it's a loss for an entire movement. He was an activist with Black Lives Matter.
It's a tragedy because we don't have so many of those voices out there.
Dubaha was known for this video. During a live broadcast, he jumped police barricades and tried to snatch away a Confederate flag. Dubaha is a well-known leader in Charleston and in Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, man, I remember this, man. That brother had some serious hops, man. Like, he literally, like, these, like, 4 Klansmen had, like, got a permit to protest somewhere. And they were just standing there being Klansmen. And, you know, the police protect them just like they protect the Black Lives Matter activists when they have their protests. When you have a permit to protest, or when you just protesting, the police gonna protect you. Have you ever been to a Black Lives Matter protest? So they had it taped off, and this brother jumped over that. This brother jumped over that. And grabbed that flag. I remember that. I remember when that happened. When I found out they killed this brother, I said, damn.
And he was an activist with Black Lives Matter.
It's a tragedy because we don't have so many of those voices out there.
Dubaha was known for this video. During a live broadcast, he jumped police barricades and tried to snatch away a Confederate flag. Dubaha is a well-known leader in Charleston and in Black Lives Matter.
It's a great loss. It's a tragedy that such a great mind, so young, and so much promise in his future was just taken away.
Kristen Pierce, Eyewitness News.
New Orleans police are investigating his homicide so far, though no word on a motive or possible suspects.
Well, guys, the investigation has come to a culmination, and they found out who did it. And not only that, but the guy pleaded guilty. So, if he's covering for some white supremacists who really killed this brother in the hood in New Orleans, some white supremacists came to the hood in New Orleans and gunned this brother down at 1:30 in the morning. And this black guy's taking the rap for it. He should have pled not guilty and told the world that, look, I'm being framed. White supremacists making me take the rap for this. He didn't say that. He said, I plead guilty to this. Killing that good brother. That was a good brother, too. Even though I don't agree ideologically with that brother, I did a lot of research on that brother because I did a story on this when it happened. I was one of the few YouTubers to actually do a video on this. Nobody touched this once it came out. But you good brother, man. And this guy killed him, man. Police identified Inglis as the shooter. Law enforcement suspected that the killing was a case of mistaken identity. Igles was on probation for drug and gun charges at the time of the shooting. Who's surprised by that? He will receive credit for time served since his July 2018 arrest. Igles' defense attorney, Keith Couture, said that accepting the plea deal was a difficult decision for his client. The case rested almost entirely on one witness. However, there's always the risk of going to trial. Investigators say that Igles killed the 32-year-old Moye, who preferred to be called Muhyiddin Dabaha, in the 1900 block of Bienville Street, early February 6 in 2018. Using surveillance video recovered from the area, police concluded that Moye, who was visiting New Orleans, was bicycling down the street when someone tried to knock him off his bike. Moye kept pedaling away, but the attacker pulled out a gun and fired several times, killing him. Black Lives Matter activists can't even visit another city and go for a bike ride. Now somebody trying to push him off the bike, and then that don't work, they shoot him. Didn't take nothing, just shot him. Mistaken identity, thought he was somebody else because he was a brother. He was looking for another brother to kill and accidentally killed the Black Lives Matter.